In 1998, a man named Stanley Meyer walked into a restaurant in Ohio. He ordered a glass of cranberry juice. A few minutes later, he suddenly grabbed his throat, ran outside, and screamed to his brother, "They poisoned me!" He died before the ambulance arrived. So what did Stanley Meyer do to deserve this? Well, he claimed he invented a car that runs on water. And that's just the beginning. Throughout history, there have been inventors who created technologies that could have changed everything: free energy, cancer cures, materials that laugh at nuclear explosions. But somehow, these inventions always seem to disappear. The inventors die under mysterious circumstances. The patents get bought and buried. The prototypes vanish into thin air. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe there are people out there who really don't want you to have nice things. Tonight, we're diving into 10 suppressed inventions that could have changed the world. And I'll let you decide. Were these guys geniuses ahead of their time, or were they just really good con artists? Number 1. Starlight. Okay, let's start with something absolutely insane. Imagine a material that can survive temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, in the 1980s, a British hairdresser named Maurice Ward claimed he invented exactly that. Yeah, you heard me right. A hairdresser, not a scientist, not an engineer. A guy who cut hair for a living. He called his invention Starlight. And here's where it gets crazy. In 1990, he went on a BBC science show called Tomorrow's World to demonstrate it. They coated an egg with this starlight stuff, then blasted it with a blowtorch for 5 minutes straight. 5 minutes of direct flame. When they cracked the egg open, it was still raw inside, completely uncooked. The shell wasn't even warm to the touch. Now, the British atomic weapons establishment got very interested. They tested Starlight against temperatures equivalent to 75 Hiroshima bombs. It survived. NASA came knocking. Boeing wanted it. Defense contractors were throwing money at this guy. We're talking about a material that could revolutionize everything. Spacecraft heat shields, fireproof buildings, military armor. The applications were endless. But here's the thing about Maurice Ward. He was paranoid, like extremely paranoid. He refused to sell the formula unless he kept 51% ownership. He wouldn't even let scientists analyze it properly because he was afraid they'd steal his secret. Every negotiation fell apart because Ward wouldn't budge. And then, in 2011, Maurice Ward died. He took the formula to his grave. His family says they have it somewhere, but Starlight has never appeared on the market. 20 years of negotiations and nothing. So what happened here? Was Ward just a paranoid old man who couldn't make a deal? Or did he know something about these corporations that made him refuse to trust them? We'll never know. The material that could survive nuclear heat died with a hairdresser from England. Number 2, the water fuel cell. All right, now we're getting into the really controversial stuff. Remember Stanley Meyer from the beginning? The guy who died in that restaurant? Let's talk about what he actually invented. Stanley Meyer was an American inventor who claimed he built something called a water fuel cell. The idea was simple but revolutionary. You take water, you split it into hydrogen and oxygen, and you burn the hydrogen as fuel. Basically, your car runs on water. Now, splitting water into hydrogen isn't new. It's called electrolysis, and we've been doing it for over 100 years. The problem is, it takes more energy to split the water than you get back from burning the hydrogen. It's not efficient. It's actually a net loss. But Meyer claimed he figured out a way around this. He said he could split water using special resonance frequencies that required very little energy. Way less than normal electrolysis. If true, this would break the laws of thermodynamics as we understand them. Meyer built a dune buggy powered by his water fuel cell. He claimed he drove it across the country, stopping only to refill the tank with water from garden hoses. No gas stations, just tap water. Investors got excited. The media covered him. He was going to change the world. Then, in 1996, some investors sued him for fraud. They said his invention was just regular electrolysis with fancy marketing. An Ohio court agreed and ruled against Meyer, but Meyer didn't give up. He kept working on his invention, kept doing demonstrations, kept promising the revolution was coming. And then came March 20th, 1998. Meyer was at a restaurant meeting with two Belgian investors. He took a sip of cranberry juice, grabbed his neck, ran outside, and said those famous last words. "They poisoned me." The coroner ruled it a brain aneurysm, natural causes. His supporters don't buy it. They point out the timing was awfully convenient. They point out that Big Oil had every reason to want him gone. They point out that his patents and prototypes disappeared shortly after his death. Was Stanley Meyer a fraud who got lucky with his death timing? Or was he actually on to something, and someone made sure we'd never find out? His brother still maintains the technology was real. The scientific establishment says it was nonsense. And the water fuel cell remains one of the most divisive inventions in conspiracy history. Number 3, the Cloudbuster. Okay, this one is weird, like really weird. But stick with me. Wilhelm Reich was an Austrian psychoanalyst who worked with Sigmund Freud. Legit credentials, smart guy. But somewhere along the way, Reich went down a very strange path. He became convinced that there was a universal life energy flowing through everything. He called it orgone energy. Think of it like the Force from Star Wars, but supposedly real. Now, most scientists thought this was nonsense. But Reich kept going. In the 1950s, he built a device called the Cloudbuster. Picture this, a bunch of long metal tubes like pipes, all pointing up at the sky, connected to cables that went down into water. Reich claimed this device could manipulate the orgone energy in the atmosphere to make it rain. Sounds crazy, right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. During a severe drought in Maine, Reich set up his Cloudbuster. According to multiple witnesses, rain started falling within hours. Farmers who hadn't seen rain in months suddenly had water for their crops. Coincidence? Weather patterns? Or did this weird pipe contraption actually do something? The FDA didn't care either way. They weren't going after the Cloudbuster. They were going after Reich's other orgone devices, which he claimed could cure diseases. The FDA got a court injunction banning Reich from selling these devices and from even talking about orgone energy. Reich ignored the injunction. He kept doing his research. He kept writing about orgone. And for that, the United States government did something shocking. They burned his books. This wasn't Nazi Germany. This was America in the 1950s. Federal agents showed up and literally burned tons of Reich's publications. They destroyed his equipment, and they threw Reich in prison for contempt of court. He died there in 1957. Now here's the kicker. Today, governments around the world openly practice weather modification. It's called cloud seeding. They shoot silver iodide into clouds to make it rain. It's not even controversial anymore. So was Wilhelm Reich just ahead of his time? Was his Cloudbuster an early, primitive version of technology that governments now use routinely? Or was he a delusional man who happened to get lucky with the weather? Either way, the fact that America burned books in the 1950s over this should make you uncomfortable. Number 4, the Sloot digital coding system. Let's jump forward to the 1990s. The internet is just getting started. People are still using dial-up modems that scream at you when you connect. Downloading a single song takes an hour. Video streaming? Forget about it. Into this world comes a Dutch electronics engineer named Romke Jan Bernhard Sloot, and he makes a claim that sounds absolutely impossible. Sloot says he's invented a data compression system that can shrink a full-length feature film down to just 8 kilobytes. Let me put that in perspective for you. A typical movie file today is about 4 gigabytes. That's 4 billion bytes. Sloot claimed he could compress it down to 8,000 bytes. We're talking about compression ratios that shouldn't be mathematically possible. It's like saying you can fit an entire library into a Post-it note. But here's the thing. Sloot wasn't just some random guy making claims on the internet. He demonstrated his system to executives at Philips, one of the biggest electronics companies in the world. And they were impressed enough to start negotiating a deal. We're talking about technology that would have made DVDs obsolete overnight. Streaming video in the 90s. Unlimited data storage. This was worth billions. The contract was almost ready. Sloot was days away from signing. And then, on July 11, 1999, Rumke Jan Bernhard Sloot died of a heart attack. He was 64 years old. Now here's where it gets suspicious. Sloot kept his source code on a single floppy disk. After his death, that floppy disk vanished. Gone. Nobody knows where it went. His family couldn't find it. Phillips couldn't find it. It simply disappeared. Some people think Sloot's system wasn't really compression at all. They think it was more like a reference key where the data was actually stored somewhere else, and the 8 kilobytes just told the system where to find it. That would explain how it worked, but it would also mean you'd need massive servers to store all the actual data. We'll never know for sure. The only copy of the code disappeared along with any chance of understanding what Sloot actually created. Convenient timing, theft, or just a tragic coincidence? Pick your theory. Number 5. The Ogle carburetor. The year is 1977. America is in the middle of an oil crisis. Gas prices are through the roof. People are waiting in lines for hours just to fill up their tanks. The country is desperate for a solution. Enter Tom Ogle, a 24-year-old mechanic from El Paso, Texas. Ogle claims he's modified his 1970 Ford Galaxy to get over 100 miles per gallon. At a time when most cars got maybe 15 miles per gallon, this was revolutionary. But Ogle wasn't just making claims. He let journalists test his car. He let mechanics examine it. According to newspaper reports from the time, the car was driven 200 miles on just 2 gallons of fuel. That's 100 miles per gallon, verified by independent observers. So how did it work? Ogle's system bypassed the carburetor entirely. Instead, it vaporized the gasoline before it entered the engine. The theory was that vaporized fuel burns more completely than liquid fuel, so you get more energy from less gas. Ogle became a celebrity. He was on TV. He was in magazines. Big car companies reached out. Oil companies reached out. And this is where the story gets dark. According to Ogle, Shell Oil offered him millions of dollars for his patent. Not to develop it, to bury it. Ogle refused. Then things started happening. In 1981, someone shot Tom Ogle. He survived, but he was shaken. A few months later, Tom Ogle was found dead. The official cause? Overdose of alcohol and painkillers. He was 29 years old. His family insisted he wasn't a drug user. His supporters cried murder. The 100 miles per gallon carburetor became one of the most famous conspiracy theories in automotive history. Now, to be fair, mainstream engineers say Ogle's claims violated basic physics. They say you can't get more energy out of gasoline just by vaporizing it. The energy content is the same either way. But those newspaper reports exist. Those witness testimonies exist. Something was happening with that car. Whether it was revolutionary technology or clever trickery, we'll never know. Tom Ogle took his secret to an early grave. Number 6, Rife's cancer frequency device. This one is heavy. We're talking about cancer. We're talking about the possibility that a cure existed almost 100 years ago. And we're talking about what might have happened to it. Royal Raymond Rife was an American inventor who worked in the early 1900s. His specialty was optics. He built microscopes that were incredibly powerful, way beyond what anyone else could make at the time. Rife claimed his microscopes could see living viruses, something that mainstream science said was impossible with optical microscopes. But Rife didn't stop there. He developed a theory that every microorganism, including cancer cells, has what he called a mortal oscillatory rate. Basically, a specific frequency at which it vibrates apart and dies. Think of it like how an opera singer can shatter a wine glass by hitting the right note. Rife built a device that could generate these frequencies. He called it the beam ray. And in 1934, according to his supporters, Rife conducted an experiment at the University of Southern California. 16 terminally ill cancer patients were treated with his beam ray device. The reported results? 14 of them were declared clinically cured within 90 days. If true, this would be one of the most important medical discoveries in human history. A non-invasive, painless cancer treatment that actually works. So what happened? According to Riffe's supporters, the American Medical Association happened. They say the AMA saw Riffe's invention as a threat to the entire cancer treatment industry. Chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, all of it would become obsolete. Billions of dollars would disappear, so they destroyed him. Riffe's laboratory was allegedly set on fire. His research was stolen. Doctors who supported his work reportedly had their licenses revoked. By the 1950s, Royal Rife was a broken man, drinking heavily, his reputation in ruins. He died in 1971, forgotten by mainstream medicine. Now, let me be clear. There is no peer-reviewed scientific evidence that Riffe's device actually cured cancer. The medical establishment considers his theories to be pseudoscience, but his supporters point out that his work was never given a fair trial. The experiments were never properly replicated because anyone who tried was allegedly shut down. Today, you can find Riffe machines sold online as alternative health devices. The FDA has prosecuted people for marketing them as cancer cures. But the believers persist. They say Riffe figured something out, and powerful interests made sure we'd never benefit from it. Truth or delusion? I'll let you decide. Number 7, the chronovisor. All right, let's take a break from corporate conspiracies and dive into something completely different. We're going to the Vatican. In the 1960s, an Italian priest named Father Pellegrino Ernetti made one of the strangest claims in history. He said he had helped build a machine that could see into the past. He called it the chronovisor. Now, Ernetti wasn't some random priest. He was a respected scientist, a musicologist who had done legitimate academic work. He claimed that in the 1950s he worked with a team of 12 scientists, including reportedly Enrico Fermi, the famous physicist, to build this device. The chronovisor allegedly worked by detecting and reconstructing the light and sound waves that had been emitted in the past. Since these waves never completely disappear, just get fainter and fainter, the chronovisor could supposedly pick them up and recreate what had happened. Ernetti claimed he used the device to witness some incredible events: the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, a performance of a lost play in ancient Rome, and most controversially, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. He even produced a photograph that he claimed was Jesus on the cross, captured by the chronovisor. The photo was later shown to closely resemble a wooden crucifix sculpture from a church in Perugia. Suspicious. According to Ernetti, the Vatican got scared of what the chronovisor could do. Imagine being able to see what really happened in history. You could expose lies, blackmail world leaders, rewrite religious texts. The potential for chaos was unlimited, so the Vatican allegedly dismantled the chronovisor and hid it deep in their secret archives. Before his death in 1994, Ernetti reportedly confessed that the photograph was fake, but he insisted the machine itself was real. Was Father Ernetti a brilliant scientist whose invention scared the most powerful religious institution on Earth? Or was he a priest with a vivid imagination who got caught up in his own story? The Vatican has never commented, and with 53 miles of secret archives that almost no one can access, who knows what's actually in there? Number 8, Wardenclyffe Tower. Now we come to the big one, the most famous suppressed invention of all time, the symbol of what could have been. We're talking about Nikola Tesla. If you don't know who Tesla is, here's the short version. He's the guy who invented the modern electrical system. Without Tesla, you wouldn't have the power grid. You wouldn't have AC electricity. You wouldn't have radio, at least not in the form we know it. He was one of the most brilliant minds in human history. And at the peak of his career, Tesla had a dream. He wanted to give free electricity to the entire world. In 1901, Tesla began building Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, New York. The tower was designed to tap into the Earth's natural electrical field and transmit power wirelessly across the globe. No power lines, no electrical bills, just free unlimited energy broadcast through the air like radio waves. The project was funded by J.P. Morgan, one of the wealthiest and most powerful bankers in American history. Morgan had already made a fortune from copper wire, which was essential for electrical transmission. He thought Tesla was just building a better communication system, like a super radio tower. When Morgan realized Tesla's actual plan, he allegedly asked one question that changed everything. Where do I put the meter? You can't charge people for electricity if it's floating through the air for free. You can't make money from something everyone can access. Morgan pulled his funding. Without money, construction stopped. Tesla desperately tried to find other investors, but Morgan had enough influence to make sure no one would touch the project. By 1917, the tower was demolished and sold for scrap. Tesla spent the rest of his life in poverty, living alone in hotel rooms, feeding pigeons in New York parks. When he died in 1943, FBI agents immediately seized all of his papers and research. Some of those documents are still classified to this day. Let that sink in. A scientist who died 80 years ago, and his research is still considered too sensitive for the public to see. Tesla's supporters believe he figured out things that would have completely disrupted the energy industry. Free energy would mean no more oil companies, no more utility monopolies, no more control. So those in power made sure it would never happen. Was free energy actually possible? Modern physics says it's complicated. Some of Tesla's ideas were sound, others were probably beyond what current technology can achieve. But we'll never know how far he actually got because his most important work was confiscated and hidden. Wardenclyffe Tower remains the ultimate symbol of innovation, crushed by greed. Number 9, the GM EV1. Let's bring this into living memory. This isn't some guy in a garage 100 years ago. This is a major American corporation in the 1990s. This is documented on video. In 1996, General Motors released the EV1, the first modern electric car from a major automaker, and people loved it. The EV1 was fast. It was quiet. It cost almost nothing to operate. Drivers became passionate advocates for their cars. Celebrities like Mel Gibson and Tom Hanks drove them. There were waiting lists. People were genuinely excited about electric vehicles decades before Tesla made them cool again. Then something weird happened. GM didn't sell the EV1s. They only leased them. And in 2003, GM decided they wanted them back. All of them. GM sent letters to every EV1 driver telling them the lease was ending and the cars would not be renewed. Drivers begged to buy their cars. They offered to pay full price, cash on the table. GM refused. They wanted the cars destroyed. And that's exactly what happened. GM collected every EV1 they could find and crushed them. Hundreds of perfectly functional electric vehicles were flattened in the Arizona desert. There's video footage of this. Rows and rows of EV1s being fed into industrial crushers. GM's official explanation? The cars weren't profitable. There wasn't enough consumer demand. This was despite the waiting lists, despite the loyal customers literally crying as they handed over their keys. This was despite the fact that electric cars would need almost no maintenance compared to gas cars because they have fewer moving parts. No oil changes, no transmission repairs, no spark plugs. Critics point out that this lack of maintenance was exactly the problem. Car companies make a huge portion of their profits from servicing vehicles. An electric car is bad for the service department. And then there's the oil industry. Electric cars don't need gas. Every EV1 on the road was money not going to oil companies. The timing is also interesting. California had passed a law requiring automakers to sell zero-emission vehicles. The EV1 was GM's compliance car. Shortly after GM killed the EV1, the automakers successfully lobbied to weaken that law. Coincidence? The documentary Who Killed the Electric Car covered this whole saga in 2006. It's worth watching, because the EV1 proved that electric vehicles were viable in the 1990s. We could have had them mainstream 20 years earlier. Instead, we had to wait for Tesla to prove it all over again. How much carbon did we pump into the atmosphere during those extra 20 years? How much did we spend on gas? Someone made that decision for us. Number 10. Cold fusion. Let's end with a story about what happens when you threaten a really, really big industry. March 23rd, 1989. Two scientists at the University of Utah call a press conference. Martin Fleischmann and Stanley Pons announced that they have achieved nuclear fusion at room temperature. This is huge. Like, change human civilization huge. Nuclear fusion is what powers the sun. It produces enormous amounts of energy with virtually no pollution and no dangerous waste. The problem is, fusion normally requires temperatures of millions of degrees. It takes massive facilities and billions of dollars just to sustain a reaction for a few seconds. We've been trying to make it practical for decades, but Fleischmann and Pons said they did it on a tabletop, with basic chemistry equipment, at room temperature. If true, this would solve the world's energy problems forever. Clean, unlimited power for everyone. The scientific world went crazy. Labs around the globe rushed to replicate the experiment. Funding agencies started dreaming about what this could mean. For a few weeks, it looked like everything was about to change. Then the failures started coming in. Lab after lab reported they couldn't reproduce the results. The excitement turned to skepticism, then to anger. Scientists accused Fleischmann and Pons of sloppy work at best, fraud at worst. The press that had celebrated them now mocked them. Cold fusion became a joke, synonymous with bad science and wishful thinking. Fleischmann and Pons were professionally destroyed. They eventually left the United States and continued their research in France, far from the spotlight. But here's what's interesting. In the years since, there has been a steady trickle of researchers reporting positive results in what they now call low-energy nuclear reactions, or LENR. These aren't crackpots. Some of them work for NASA. Some work for the Department of Defense. They're not claiming free energy, but they are claiming that something unusual is happening in these experiments, something that mainstream physics can't fully explain. Why hasn't this gotten more attention? Critics point to the billions of dollars invested in traditional hot fusion research. There are massive facilities, thousands of jobs, entire careers built on the assumption that fusion requires huge machines and huge budgets. If cold fusion were real, all of that would be worthless. There's a very powerful lobby that has every reason to want cold fusion to stay debunked. Were Fleischmann and Pons ahead of their time, dismissed because they threatened the wrong people? Or were they simply wrong, and the scientists who still chase cold fusion are chasing a ghost? The debate continues, and billions of dollars hang in the balance. So there you have it. 10 inventions that could have changed the world. Free energy, cancer cures, materials that survive nuclear blasts, cars that run on water. Some of these were probably hoaxes. Some were probably real technologies killed by greed. And some we'll simply never know. But here's what bothers me. In every single case, the inventor died young, or went bankrupt, or was professionally destroyed. In every single case, powerful industries had billions of dollars to lose if the invention succeeded. In every single case, the technology disappeared. Once is an anomaly. Twice is a coincidence. 10 times? That starts to look like a pattern. We live in an age of incredible innovation. But ask yourself this. If someone invented something tomorrow that would bankrupt the oil industry, or the pharmaceutical industry, or the utility companies, what would happen to them? Would we even hear about it? Or would they end up like Stanley Meyer, dying in a restaurant parking lot, clutching their throat, whispering about poison? The archive remains open. Let me know in the comments which invention you think was real, and which ones you think are still being hidden from us. And if you've got a lead on something I should investigate next, drop it below. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and never stop asking questions. I'll see you in the next one.